A lot of the materials that I use, they're basically food. Galleries take 50%. That's why I got poisoned from it, because I was using a lot of it. The jungle was trying to retake it. Here in New York, I think the market pressures, you can get away with
showing off late.
more and more, you know.
How have you been? Any interesting projects you're working on?
I've been good. There's a lot of projects coming together right now. Co-curating 2 shows and curating 1 show. One will be this summer, and then 2 more and over the coming winter.
It's outside of the show you currently have.
Yeah, those are curatorial projects. Yeah, I have my solo show up at 550 Gallery right now in Long Island City. Also was just in a group show last night for this benefit for this organization called Artistic Noise, and they work with kids that have been through the juvenile system to do like art projects with them, kind of develop their creative passions. So Casman Gallery that does this benefit every year with them, and they invite just a bunch of artists. A lot of people from New York. You know, there's like a lot of people in the art community, especially people you see around the Lower East Side galleries, Chinatown galleries. But it was a Monday night opening, so I usually don't go to art openings on Monday night, but I had to for this one.
So that's one project you're curating right now?
Well, so that's a group show that I've got a work in. I co-curated a show with a former professor of mine, Deborah Drexler, and then this guy, Liam Davis, who's an artist and curator, and it's 21 artists from New York, about 21 from Hawaii. It'll be at the University of Hawaii in end of August. It opens, so it'll be up like through September, October, November. It's a survey show of contemporary painting in New York, and then in Hawaii.
Generally, our community is different in Hawaii compared to New York.
Yeah, because there are different places, and there's definitely like different concerns. But we'll see what it looks like when the show is all together. The world is so global now that you get a lot of kind of similar ideas all around the planet. But there certainly are. And Hawaii is a really unique place with its own history. I think it'll be nice to have all that like work out there from the New York painters, and just see what kind of connections people make between what's happening here versus happening there. But I went to school in Hawaii, so that's where I got my master's degree.
Close to your heart, I guess, the place.
Yeah, I spent 5 years out there, because it was 3 years in the program, and I taught for a couple years.
Oh.
So in a lot of projects that I've done out here, I've tried to incorporate artists from there into the project, in some kind of way, because there's a lot of interesting things happening out there, but it's so geographically isolated that you don't always get to see what people are making out here on the mainland, on the East Coast.
Yeah, it's fun. And I know you have art residency coming up in Latvia, which your family roots are from as well.
Yeah, I'll be in Riga for 2 months this year. And it was something, I mean, I applied to this residency because I specifically wanted to go to Latvia. I spent a couple weeks out there not last summer, 2 summers ago, during this big folk festival. I got really interested in some of the materials in Latvian craft. There's a lot of weaving with wool, and there's a lot of linen and natural dyes. I just felt that it would be a good experience because I've only ever gone to Latvia for short vacations with family, and I do have relatives out there because my grandparents immigrated during World War II, and a lot of family stayed out there. It'll be nice to just kind of connect with that part of the past, and also just discover what kind of material and maybe other like conceptual connections there are from what I've been doing in my practice all my life and what's happening in Riga.
It's so cool as you to have family there. I mean, that's definitely another reason to go. So considering those other materials that you said very popular there, do you think you can incorporate it into your art as well?
Yeah, I'm going to try. I don't really know what I'm going to make when I'm out there. I want to talk to, part of being out there is just meeting a lot of Latvian artists and seeing what they're doing and learning some things materially that I have yet to discover. My goal is to make work more like lightweight and maybe could be rolled up and easier to transport back to the States, because I work usually on stretch paintings on big frames or on panels. So I don't really know. I think I'm not going to be making the same kind of work that I make here in Brooklyn, just for like the practicality of making a bunch of big paintings and then trying to ship them back to the States. So I'm going to think about like textile and paper and natural dyes if I'm, discover some things. And then, just spend time also in other artist studios, and maybe projects come up in the future, curatorial projects where I can incorporate Latvian artists to show ideas. So I don't really know much about the art scene over there. Although I'm told I'll meet pretty much everybody in the first week. I had a meeting with the residency curators, and I guess it's a pretty like tight knit community. And Riga is kind of a small, art community. But I think that'll be nice. It was how Honolulu felt a bit too. It was like kind of a smaller community that you saw often when you went to different art events. In New York, it's like every time you go to anything, you're always meeting new people. There's just so many overlapping social networks here that it's a bit different when you're in a smaller city.
You've been in residencies in Tokyo, and generally you've been in many. So when you come back to the States, how does it feel for you to go back to your normal work?
I feel like every time I do a residency, there's always some kind of change. It's a place where you really just are focused in on yourself and your practice, and don't have your normal schedule to kind of keep. A residency period is a place where you can really kind of make a mental break with stuff that you were doing before. And so I don't know what that'll look like in life. The last residency I did was in 2023. It was at the Sam and Adele Golden Foundation in upstate New York, and that led to this big shift in my practice where I started using light shapes that were coming through my studio window up there, and then I brought that back to my my Brooklyn studio. So as light casts through the window and onto the wall or onto the painting, so I would trace these moving shapes. So I think I'm going into the residency with the same sort of attitude and being like, well, I'm not going to make paintings the way that I'm making them here for practical reasons, and so we'll see what happens.
That's exciting because I do know this light shapes, and that's how you started to apply stars into your work, or it was before?
No, it was before. The light shapes originally were a way to move away from the 5-pointed star.
Okay.
So the history with the 5-pointed star actually came from another residency. Like when I graduated my MFA, I did a residency at the Vermont Studio Center, and this was around the time of the first Trump election. The work was specifically at that time about the American flag, and I guess the star was more like a symbolic idea that was connected to nationalism and the state. But it evolved over time. Eventually I isolated the star and started just looking at it a little bit more as a formal device in the painting. It still had this element of being a signifier of boundaries in the state because it was the only shape in the painting, but it's changed more and more over time. Like mid 2023 to mid 2024, not using the star at all and just using my window light as an aperture for shapes on the canvas. And then when I came into Art Cake, the studio program that I'm in now, I didn't have a window anymore, and so I sort of retreated back to the star, but using it a bit different. It was affected by what I was doing with the window light, and I took these star stencils that I've been using previously, attached them to these convex mirrors that I have in here, and then projected light into that mirror so it blows up big onto the wall and kind of distorts it. And it gave me a way to keep making shapes from light in the way that I had been in the previous studio. But then it kind of anchored it back in this shape of the star again, which has a lot of different possible connotations to it. It has the ability to conjure up ideas because of the things that the star could potentially mean to people.
I like that, and I like how again just having a residence really shifted and gave you more to work with, and you just started to implement it, and it's still not going on till today. So that's pretty big impact. I hope going to Latvia are going to be just as good. So I was curious about the place where in Art Cake. So that's where your studio is. Can you tell us more about the whole project?
Yeah, so Art Cake was started by Cordy and Ethan Ryman, two brothers, both artists. They renovated this building in, I think, 2020, 2021, and turned the ground floor into a large gallery. It's very high ceilings, big huge walls, nice lights, very state-of-the-art art gallery downstairs. And then they turned this top floor into a bunch of studios. It's an invitational studio program where they find artists that they want to invite into the studios, and then you have usually artists stay for 2 years and then it cycles out. So people come in at different times. There's people that come and go and fill into the vacant studios. There's a gallery up on this floor too with studios, and residents will do one show in there during their 2-year time here. So I'm going to do one in October right after I get back from Latvia actually. So I'll get back to the States and jump right into installments.
Stay busy.
Yeah.
Thanks for closing. So what I'm also curious, is there any certain theme for the artists who are selected to be in this gallery to get to be residents here, or it's different kind of people?
It's different people. I mean, there's definitely, there's a committee that's selecting people, so I think there's probably a certain taste that they have in artists, but It's not. I don't think they're like theming it necessarily. They might be considering who's here, who would be interesting to bring in to the mix. You know.
Was it the Golden Foundations or something else? But I saw you were in a group of artists. Yeah, it was three of you, and each person was really. There was a lady who did. She was doing collages. You were into patterns, and the third person was also kind of within the same theme. Do you remember which?
Yeah, that was the Golden Foundation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was the two artists there. I mean, there's a jury that selects people for the Golden Residence. And I think it's more based on what month you say you're available to go. It was definitely there, like especially with Emily Gerard, who was one of the artists there. There was a ton of crossover between our work, and she introduced me to this really thin tape that I've been using a lot in my recent work. Natasha Campbell, that was there too. There was a cool group. I don't think that happens every time there. I think that it might have just been random chance that there was they had a few artists paired together that got along pretty well, like, artistically, and they're also like just nice people too. We really became friends.
It's a great experience too, I guess, to be in a residency, because you're getting inspiration from your own journey, but you also see the people who represent maybe a little bit different groups. You hang out here usually, but also with artists who selected just like you, so it's pretty cool. And how did you get into the art cake? Or did they contact you, or were you proactive into?
I was kind of asking around a little bit, but I knew some artists that had been here before, and I ended up just getting an interview with the director, and we just discussed the possibility of me coming at some point, and then they had an opening occurred in one of the studios, so I just moved in. I also I was needing to leave the studio that I was in around the same time, so the timing worked out really well.
Perfect. So if someone looking forward to get into the space like this, in some kind of foundation or gallery, basically again just knowing people and seeing those opportunities and being qualified in terms of quality of your work, I assume as well, is that the main factors to get the place, or there's something else?
I think it just depends on what it is. There's residency year-long residency programs in the city where there's an application process and there's a jury and stuff like that. Sharpalentis is one that's pretty well known and has a lot of great artists that take part in it, because it's like the selection committee does a good job of finding people for that residency. But everything's a little different. I mean, you can always just find your own studio. It doesn't have to be part of some sort of like organization, but yeah, Art Cake does have like a bit, it's like their studio, but there's also like, like a bit of program. We have like open studio events, and there's like a visiting gallerist curator, kind of program where once a month someone comes in and does some studio visits you can sign up for. So there's like some aspects of programming to it. Then you have like the shows downstairs that have big opening. I think they're trying to build a community. There's the NARS Foundation in Sunset Park as well, which is another residency program. And there's a lot of studios in the Brooklyn Army Terminal, which is like a little up the road. So Sunset Park has like been slowly becoming more and more of a artist studio, neighborhood. And I think that their Art Cake's kind of trying, doing its part to kind of establish this area as a place where artists make work.
I mean, when I was coming here, I did see a lot of buildings that ideally could be remodeled as a lofts or art studios, because there's a lot of potential. That's very interesting. I feel like a lot of companies and people trying to build communities, and I think it's a great move towards.
Yeah, there's a lot of warehouses and things like that for people to renovate. I mean, there's Industry City, which is nearby. That was just like a bunch of big warehouses. It started out being more like artist studio. The one half of it still is. It's like a little bit more. It's not as cleaned up, but on the side that's closer to here, you've got a bit more like fancy restaurant. I mean, that's sort of progression. People they make it nice for the artists to come in. The artists change the reputation of the neighborhood, and then they start building fancy cafes, and then the artist go somewhere else.
Goes one way. I know that you've had pretty intense journey towards the current style of work you do and your current place in the art world. So tell us more how you got poisoned with formaldehyde. What was this period of your life? It happened in college, right?
When I was doing my MFA, I was using a lot of house paint in my work, and the process was starting to become a bit what it is now, where I use materials in ways where I'm looking for the paint to kind of express its own movements through cracking and peeling, and sort of this like accretion process of material sitting on top of other material, and the relationships forming between the layers that sort of determine the outcomes. But I was doing this with house paint in grad school for a little while. And I think it was also old house paint. It came from this metal cabinet that a ceramics professor had been like swirling paint cans in for a long time. I think house paint has less and less formaldehyde in it as they've like changed the recipe. It's still not good for you. Like that fresh paint smell is like just the smell of poison.
I like it.
But anyway, I was exposing myself to a bit too much of those chemicals. I just developed an aversion to it, like affecting my like brain, my body and stuff in a bad way. And so I moved away from using any sort of synthetic material, and I stopped oil painting too, just because of the paint thinners and stuff that I was using. At that time, I was trying to get away from all the chemical. That was when I started researching like more natural, like non-toxic painting. When you Google non-toxic painting, probably the first thing that will come up is milk paint, and it's not really used by many artists. Casein is the protein in milk, and it's what can form a binder. And it's used like these days a lot more by people that are restoring antique furniture, because antique furniture was painted with milk paint. People didn't start canning paint and putting it on shelves until around the turn of the 20th century. So before that, you would make your own paint. So one of the ways to make it was to take milk and separate out the fat from the casein, and then blend up that casein and use it as a binder that you can put pigment in. And it's a powder, kind of like pancake batter. It comes in a powder form, and you add water to it, and then that turns it into paint, and then you use it before it goes bad. Because if you leave it in its liquid state like that, it'll spoil, just like food will. Even though when you apply it on something, and then it dries, it's inert. A lot of the materials that I use, they're archival materials that have been used for hundreds of thousands of years. But if you leave them out in a jar, then they're going to spoil, because they're basically food. So I'll keep things in the fridge. So I use egg. I expanded from milk paint into also using egg tempera, because milk paint is more opaque, and egg you can glaze with, and I was looking for ways of creating more like translucency in the paint. So I adopted egg tempera, and then I got also really into distemper, which is using animal glue. So that rabbit skin glue is like the most common. There's like hide glue, which is they're all just from different parts of animals, and then the proteins in animal skin or sinew or whatever parts of the animal it is, are what is forming this like proteinaceous binder that like keeps the lamination of the pigment that you put in it. But I like distemper, which is rabbit skin glue based paint or any animal glue based paint, because I can buy a big bag of it, like this, and add water to it, heat it up, and make a lot of glue. Actually make a good amount of paint for an economical amount of money. I can work with bigger quantities of paint more cost effectively than I can with oil paint. But it's also just a more sensitive lamination, and that it'll crack and peel more readily. When it gets wet, it kind of reactivates, and so it creates problems in the painting surface that I like. I like when the painting gets out of my control, and then I have to figure out what to do about these things that are happening, things that are coming off the painting, or weird like tactile interactions between the layers. So using rabbit skin glue that hasn't been scientifically engineered to be this perfect laminate works better for my process than something like house paint, did, because the house paint is like designed basically to be pretty good. Yeah, you have to really like use a lot of it to get it to get fucked up, and that was what that's why I got poisoned from it, because I was using a lot of it.
So you kind of to use a lot of paint, and of course you did. So
I couldn't just stop using a lot of paint. I had to think of another way.
Well, there's a safer way for you. I was curious about that actually. So when you paint, when you create art and it goes out of your control, from one side you embrace it because you like to solve the challenge, you like to see where the painting goes. But is there any case when it frustrates you, when maybe the outcome is something that you don't like and you react emotionally? Is there an opportunity for the other way around, when it's maybe you feel a hard time embracing it and it's actually just frustrates you?
Well, with every change to the painting, something is lost. It's inevitably that if you do something new to the work, whatever it was before is gone, and you'll never get it back. And that's what makes it different, maybe from digital, media, where you can like rewind. Whatever you've done materially to the surface has like transformed it. I mean, I think in my whole process is based around accepting that there are definitely moments where I do something I'm like, I probably looked better before, but really I end up being happy with the result like later down the line. Every once in a while I see an image I took of a painting that's since been changed. And I'm like, I guess it was all right. Maybe I could have just left it alone. But I think that the process really is about like taking these objects and pushing them to a point where they transform into something that feels outside of myself, that is like not something that I could have planned on being made, but that was produced through this pretty long, like process of building things up and letting the materials interact with one another. I think of my relationship with paint as being more of a collaboration rather than me being like the dictator of the studio. There's a lot more push and pull in my mind, and that's the way that I enjoy working.
It's a really impressive, flexible approach, and I feel like it goes through the whole life. So when you had to research these new paints and try to go for like more sustainable, more healthy ways to do that, it didn't change your focus because you were already embracing the change and you were already embracing the paint that kind of behaves on its own. So when you had to go from normal like acrylic and oil paints towards the area you're in right now, it didn't really change your path. You just changed your tools, right? Is that a correct way to say it?
Yeah, because I think already by that time I was starting to realize that what my work was about. And I mean, I was very impacted at that time in terms of like the content of the work by the house I was living in. I was living at the top of Manoa Valley, which is where the University of Hawaii Manoa is. And I was on this like dead end street right on the edge of the jungle towards the top of the valley. And we were in this old house that always kind of felt like the jungle was trying to retake it. There was always just like plants in the backyard that you would have to like pull out, or else it would just like grow wild. And the paint was peeling, and if you left anything outside, it would, like rust or mildew. It was just like a very kind of wet
climate. It probably did try to retake it though. It's not just a feeling.
Yeah, I mean, if you left it alone, it would. I mean, and if you went out into the jungle, there was houses out there that had been abandoned, and they were in various like stages of just like the forest like growing up through them, and just being, returned back to the jungle. And that relationship between humans trying to create a structure that controls our reality, or establishes this area of this is like human society and we do our human things inside it, and then maybe we have less control of what's happening outside of that area. I got really interested in those spaces where those boundaries start to blur between where we have control and the things we don't have control over, non-human forces expressing their will and their desire to move beyond the walls that we put up.
Did you feel scared for your career at all, or not, when you realized you can't work with oil anymore?
I don't know if I was scared. I was maybe just more concerned about my health and my career. I don't know. I think I was in grad school in Hawaii. I wasn't thinking too much about my career in the market and things like that. It can feel you can feel a bit far away from the market. I think when you're in Honolulu, it does feel like its own place, where that has its own. Yeah, when you're in New York, I think the market pressures are a bit more ever present, because there's so many galleries, there's so many artists like trying to show in galleries, there's a lot of collectors here, and the market becomes something that's more on my mind, and especially because I also like work in a gallery too, and so I think about art from that perspective as well. In Hawaii, I think I was very much more focused just on my ideas and developing my work rather than what my career was going to be.
Maybe it's a great place to learn then.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think sometimes when you work when you go to grad school in a place that's like a big economic center for the art world, you're inevitably being affected by market forces, even if on an unconscious level, just because you're in that milieu.
So I actually did want to ask you something about that. Have ever, living, it's not about being, it's about living as a part of the market, because market is everywhere here. And so financials or like need to please the crowd or anything of those lines ever affected your like creative judgment or strained it in any way, or you feel like you can create without thinking what market going to say?
It's hard to pull myself completely out of the market. I think that actually applies to every aspect of just being a person inside of capitalism, where imagining yourself outside of it is kind of impossible, because it embeds itself in so many aspects of how we create value and the things we believe in. I really love painting. I like to see paintings, and I like to make paintings. I like painting as a form, as like a limited rectilinear form in which you produce something within these like established boundaries, and it's a form that has been used for a very long time. So there's this like history of using this like shape to express a creative idea inside, just like there's a long history of the shape of a book being something, and the sequence of a book being linear from the introduction through the chapters to a conclusion. I think of painting in that way as this effective form for containing creative ideas, but it's also an effective form for the sale, of creative ideas. The paintings are easy to store, easier to keep in your home. They don't occupy a ton of space if you want to have them on display or if you want to put them in storage, and they can be moved around, pretty easily. They're relatively lightweight, depending, but
Right.
and so they're an effective market tool, but then they're also an effective creative tool because of their compactness. And that's I think that's why the market loves painting, is because it's so easy, to move them around,
To
put them in
evaluate,
boxes.
yeah.
You can evaluate, and there's like a whole history. So they're easy to understand, and they're easy to move about. And I don't know how much of my love of painting is connected to the fact that I live inside of capitalism, and how much of it is just an organic interest that would exist no matter what. And I don't live in that reality. So
Sadly, we can't try it
Yeah.
another time. You said it's not necessarily hard to paint, but bigger challenges to keep your focus on it. So what's your ways to stay focused or to keep your interest?
I was thinking about this week because someone was asking me because I curate and I write and I paint, and I work for a gallery, and I do a lot of different roles. And for me, like doing a lot of different things keeps things fresh. And so I think if I'm just painting every single day of the week, it's maybe not as exciting as if I'm painting a few days out of the week and then doing other things on those other days. And so I think that I've always sort of felt this way, that I work best when I have things to bounce between. I think it makes me a better writer to not be writing all the time. I think I would get bored if I was doing nothing but curating shows. But there's certain ideas that I have that I can't express through the nature of my work as a painter, that can be expressed through collecting a group of other artists and putting a show together, or through writing about artwork or some other like form of writing.
So for you, being an artist, it's not about creating an art, it's about like being involved into the art world and creating through different mediums. So it's writing part of it, putting show together is part of it, and sounds like it's only just a portion of it, like you necessarily creating the paintings itself.
Yeah, I see everything as being connected in that way, where when I do an art show, like my solo show, I think of the press release as being part of it, the text that is produced to send out to people, to give people context for the show. I think of the documentation, I think of like art reviews that other people have written, about the show as being part of it, because those are all ways that the art lives in the world. The people that just go to the show and see the paintings get to really experience it most fully, but not everyone is having that experience. We don't all we're not all able to we can't get the whole world in the same room together, doing the same thing. And so there's all these putting on a painting show that aren't just painting, and I do kind of imagine all those things as being part of the art. And so I think that extends itself too to like just the way that I operate in the art world, where for me the line between my painting practice, my writing practice, my like curatorial practice is not, I've got all these different jobs that I've got to juggle. I see it as like a continuous interaction with this like fine art world, as it's defined. I try to keep it within that world and not wander off too far, even though sometimes I do. I have this like a writing practice with these two sociologist friends that I met out in Hawaii, and we do some we do some like academic journal writing occasionally as we put something together. So sometimes I kind of stray out, but it always I do try to like
Still part of
keep
our
it focused as much as I can.
Cool.
Yeah.
No, that's just very interesting approach because I think a lot of people would look at it as like, yeah, I have 3-4 things I'm doing, but for you, you really blend it into the one streamline of just being active as a creator, and it's all goes really well together. Like that's impressive. What do you think about the art gallery world? Like, how do you see the art gallery system?
I think, it's funny, as a young artist, first learning that galleries take 50% of the work that's sold, it seems kind of like, what? Like, I bet I made the painting, But the more the longer I've been involved in the gallery side of things, like working at an art gallery, the more I've come to understand how much work the gallery does, and the more I've developed this more, I guess, like holistic idea of like what it means to generate art and, to like create the experience of art, in the world. And so I see how important that gallery relationship is. And I think these days, maybe because there's ways to kind of like platform yourself on social media or whatever, like, make a brand for yourself on TikTok, there are more and more people that are thinking, oh, well, we don't need this partnership with galleries, these like physical spaces, because you can just do it yourself. But I think that having artwork in a physical space and going to these physical spaces is the most important thing. And in order for that to happen, you need there to be businesses or museum, like institutions that put these objects up in a physical space, maintain the space, maintain the presentation of the work in a context that honors it, shares it with people, and also makes the artist money. So I think the gallery system is a valuable thing. I think that it gets taken for granted a bit these days because everyone thinks that they can be like, not everyone thinks, but I think a lot of people think that they could just do it all on their own, and make 100% of the profit. But then when you actually start doing that, it's actually, a lot of work to brand yourself and be your own businessman.
Isn't artists still have those responsibilities on branding and in a way? Because I feel like selling work to your customers, that's one thing, but at the same time, you almost have to sell it to the galleries as well, not physically, but you have to sell yourself as a worthy material to have a show, which is in a way similar process. So basically. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's true. I mean, it has to make sense for the business. A lot of that is, like how you socially position yourself for your work to seem interesting and valuable to the gallery, because the gallery wants to be able to stay in business.
And by working in galleries, like, what do you think is maybe something that being underlooked for a typical artist or even just a visitor in terms of the pressure or work that gallery do for the artist or for even the general art community?
New York, they pay a lot of rent, and that's something that maybe when you're like walking into a space for free and enjoying the work, I'm sure a lot of people are aware of it, but I feel like it's like kind of it'll make you sick to like hear some of the rent prices in New York. So I think that's like a big sacrifice, is actually like having the physical storefront space to show things. But there's like a lot of behind the scenes stuff that goes on. Like I do a lot of packing. I build a lot of boxes for paintings to figure out how to ship them. That there's this whole like ecosystem of art handler that I was a part of. And it's not as much of a focus of my work these days. But I ran with a lot of art handlers for a time in New York City, in trucks, moving things around, taking them out to Connecticut, taking them out to Long Island, installing things in people's homes. And it's a whole like community of people that are moving these portable, art objects around the country, around the world. And they're trained to get them safely from point A to point B. And so there's a lot that goes into the care of the objects. They don't just appear on the wall in the gallery and then reappear in someone's home, or like they don't just transport magically from the studio to these places. Someone's got to move these things around, and there's like a lot of labor that goes into to moving it. Yeah.
Oh my God, there's a lot of work. No, that's really interesting. So have you ever, because I know like being galleries, they all have to stay on trend and they have to show the art that will resonate with their customers, the people who coming in. Like, have you as an artist ever had the pressure of thinking about like your new body of work, if it's gonna meet the right audience and if it's gonna be like recognized in the right way? Like in terms of when you change your focus, when you come up with a new idea, how do you feel comfortable about what other people will think about it?
Yeah, I'm pretty stubborn in like this kind of way where I find it very hard to like create a work of art or anything related to painting that responds to someone else's desires or feedback or prompting. And I listen to people's opinions who I respect. You know, this is like the area of life that I've carved out where I get to do what I want. And there's other parts of my life where I'm a bit more flexible, you know, like with maybe to a degree with, I don't know, maybe not so much with right. Maybe I'm kind of flexible there too. I just think I know what's best.
Maybe I'm not flexible at all.
Maybe I'm not a flexible person. Yeah, I don't know. I think that I mean, one of the reasons I moved to New York is because it's such a big community of people that it allows for artists to do exactly the kind of art that they want. And there's potential for you to find a market for that art because of the diversity of the community of people that are, you know, going to collect it or be interested in it. Where I found that in living in other places, that the ideas about what art should be were maybe a bit more selective and particular, you know, to that area. And I think it's just the sheer quantity of people here, but also just the nature of what New York has become, because it's been this art center for a long time. It's really kind of spiraled into being this place where you can do a lot of different things. You know, you don't have to just like paint the Statue of Liberty. You can sort of do what you want, and like maybe no one's gonna care, but it could be if you're like around long enough and really do it hard enough, then people will recognize it. And I think that's not the case in every place in the world.
No, that's a good approach. Even having so much of the market influence, we still here in a way can create anything that we can imagine, and there is going to be audience for it. I think best reminder for me about that was when I was learning how to work like social media algorithms. It's not like you have to cater the audience. Audience is there. They just should find you somehow. So I think for artists it's really important to be able to create what they want and then just find people who are interested in it, versus trying to do it the other way when you're trying to cater to people and you're not creating what's naturally resonate with you. So
yeah, I think if I wanted to do that, I would have just been a designer, you know, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with being a designer, and so maybe some designers get to do whatever the hell they want to, but there's a lot of like, you know, design out there where you're making it for the client.
You start with asking what you want.
Yeah, what do you want? And let's figure out how to make it happen. And I just like have never had any interest in doing that with my life. So that's why I chose this path.
Cool. I like to hear that. I wanted to ask you a couple more questions about how do you, when you curate your own art shows, what's criteria you use to find artists that you want to put in? Like, is that just matching the theme, or there's something you're looking in their work that defines to you if they worthy to be in this group show, or how do you approach it?
Well, I start out with the idea first, and then I will look for artists that I feel like fit into the idea in different ways. So, I mean, the goal is to have a group of people that bring different layers to this expression of the idea, and maybe also like define the idea for me, because I'll start out with something kind of loose, and then as artists get brought into it, it starts to kind of shape what the show is really about. And so it's a bit like maybe similar to my painting process in that way, where I don't know what exactly the end result is going to look like, but I have a general outline of what it could be, and then it starts to get shaped by the decisions I make along the way. And there's other aspects too, like it's maybe it's an artist whose work I've liked for a while, and it's just like a chance to get to work with them, and it is a form of like socializing in a way to bring an artist into a show, like do a studio visit with them, and get to kind of like connect with them creatively. And then you also want people that seem like they're going to be responsible, that are going to bring you their work on time and communicate with you, because not everyone is capable of being responsible.
Sadly.
Yeah. And so if you find that out about an artist and they're a great artist, then it just might be that you just can't work with them again, because it's too frustrating to to have like poor communication or whatever, or just like be disappointed when something doesn't happen and in the amount of time that it needed to happen. And you know, it's nothing against them as an artist. It's just, you know, in order to like do projects, you have to like have faith in that other people are gonna do the things that they need to do for it.
No, good point. And like when you start, your idea is big and wide, and then you actually shape the show by finding artists, and only then it gets, I guess, press release and the whole final outline of what it is.
Yeah. Once like I wrote when the show that I'm working on for next January, I wrote out like a little blurb, the kind of a general idea of what it was that I sent to people, and then later, once everything is like finalized with the artist and I know what work they're going to contribute, that's at that point then I'll write, you know, press release for it.
Oh. And so when you mention, you know, artists who just being hard to work with, but the art is good, like what do you think kind of mindset that makes artists successful in a way that gallery likes them, but at the same time the art is good and they may be like not boring in it? So what's the kind of unifying factor between people who you recognize as successful artists?
I mean, I think the main thing is you just have to make good art, and you can if you make really good art, you can get away with
showing off late
more and more, you know. But I have met a lot of people that are successful, and they're very like warm to everyone they meet, and they you can tell that they haven't let, you know, their like artistic success get to them. They get other people, you know, some people that aren't like that, and they're able to find success because of other personality characteristics they have, or just because the work is so undeniably attractive to people that they, you know, find success no matter what. So I think there's a lot of different ways to you know, establish yourself in the art world. It's not just like one secret trick, you know, or else if there was, then a
lot of people would
everyone would do it. Yeah.
No, that's true. And I guess really important to me question, and the last one, what's the real success for you?
My answer to that is always just to continue painting. I like to paint, and you know, there's a lot of things that you know, answer implies, in terms of like there are things that could get in the way or make it easier, and like maybe some of those things are more like of the conventional idea of success, where you're able to just make money doing it so that you can maintain your practice. But I think as long as I'm able to make work and like show it to people, and that people like care about it and react to it, and, you know, kind of accept it into society, then that's successfully painting.